strings in C++. So when you're learning new things, I try to put these little W3C schools in there, W3 schools. They're very short little tutorials that quite often include things I'm not covering in the class. But there you go. Manipulating strings are part of the C++ standard library. So what does standard library mean? What's a standard library in a programming language? What does that mean?
It's kind of a collection of functions or well.
It is. Yeah, it's a collection of functions and stuff. What's the difference between being part of the standard library and we have to import it or add it in?
Whether or not it's already a part of the program we're using.
Yeah, and whether it's already part of the programming language. So C++ is very bare bones. It doesn't even include input output. It does include ints and doubles and characters and that sort of thing. And it does include strings. Now, remember in Java where string was actually an object? It's not what's called it's not raw, primitive. So a primitive variable is something that's not a class, which C++, everything is primitive unless we make it a class. There are no primitive variables in Python because everything's an object in Python. Java has a mixture of primitive variables and object variables, like strings in Java. Remember we had to use the dot equals thing? That's a method that methods can only be part of an object. And what's the difference between calling a method and using a function? How does it look different when we're doing it? Like for instance, I have isVal in here, and how I'm calling it shows you whether it's a function or it's a method. What's the difference between calling a function and calling a method? What does it look like? Do you remember?
Method you already have the function creating this.
A function doesn't have an object in front of it. If this was a method, we'd have our object of whatever it is we're working with and do isVal. Like we did with the string .2=. In Java, we had whatever it is dot equals, I can't remember what it was, to do equivalence of strings. And then in here, we had to put the other string. So that's a method because it's part of the object or part of the class. This is a function because it doesn't have an object in front of it. So when C++ is compiled, it says, all right, what the heck is this thing? It's not part of my standard library. It's not part of this or this. It says, oh, this is our guy. Oh, and I forgot to put a function header up here, didn't I? This defines the function. What's the function header? Boy, I'm getting all kinds of good responses. So a function header in C++, you have to put the function at the top. If you don't put it at the top, a convention for doing that you would want to do anyway is to define what's called a function header. And that's how a function header is defined. That tells the C++ preprocessor, because before it compiles, it has to like say, oh, I need memory here, and this thing is here, and all this stuff. And this tells the compiler that there is going to be a function somewhere in here that's isVal. So now we can take isVal and move it anywhere we want. We can move it into another file if we wish. Otherwise, you're restricted by placement. And it's common to use this little guy. That just says to C++, look what's coming up. You better pay attention to me and do something. So if we build this, it should work. Now watch, it'll fail. That's always what happens when I go off on things that are out of, yep, off script. So it's a good habit just to do the function headers when you're creating functions. And we haven't gotten the objects yet, so it's a function prototype. We haven't done objects yet in C++, but we will. So this is a function because we don't create an object to use it. Now we have this library of string. To do all the string things that we've done up to this point, we don't need the string library. However, the however part means that this is something you should pay attention to. However, the string library has bunches of functions that allow us to work with strings, like all of these guys, at, length, size, find, substring, all that stuff is part of the string library. If all we're doing is working with a string as a primitive variable and we're assigning values to it, we're fine. That's part of the standard library. This, everything here, standard library, standard library, standard library, standard library. Oh, there it is. Input dot length. So is this a function or a method? We're not really creating an object, but it's like a method where it has dot length. So that's what the C++ library gives us, is that in effect, all of our strings can behave as objects and methods can be attached to them. So that gives us the length. Without the string library, we can't do that. A lot of the stuff is included in the Python standard library. So in this program, the only thing that's not part of the standard library is that. Oh, no. ToLower, I think ToLower is part of the standard library because we have built-in characters. And actually started with the wrong program, but that's fine. So what is the type of data that's in a char? What's a char? I mean, that's how you pronounce it. It's a character. So what's a character? What type of data type, Andy, is a character?
It usually ends up being a single letter.
It is always a single letter. Yep. So it's a single letter, and a string in C++ is really an array of characters. And you can kind of use strings the same way in Java as an array. You can use it in Python as an array, which allows you to pull out information out of it. I only did char in here just because we're wanting to find a character and we're wanting to find out, is it a vowel? Now, a Boolean function returns what kind of value? I'm returning all this, but what am I returning with a Boolean function? Because this part tells us what we're returning. This part tells us what we're bringing in. So what kind of a value am I returning from a Boolean function?
Well, but if it's true, it's a value, so I return the value.
You're pretty close. You're returning true or false, because Boolean is always true or false. And what this is saying, if our character is in this, it's true. If it's not in this, it's false. That's what the Boolean means. ToLower means that if somebody types in a capital letter or a lowercase letter, I don't care. I'm going to change it to lowercase and only compare lowercase. That way I don't have to compare upper and lowercase. So that's fairly common as a character function. And that's what's happening here. See, I'm calling the if is val function. I'm putting in the input. And how am I getting this input? Well, there's my string I've typed in. I'm going through the string just like it's an array because it is an array. It's an array of characters. And I'm going through one at a time and I'm testing each character to see, is it a vowel or not? So it's fairly common to name a Boolean function is, because you're asking a question, is this a vowel? I could have said, is this a vowel? You know, I could have called it that to be explicit. If this is a vowel, if this returns true, then I say the first vowel is at index whatever, because that's all I want to do is find the first vowel. And then I print it, and then I return 0, which means the operating system says, oh, good job, everybody's happy. If there's no vowels, I return to the operating system here. And this does work. Well, it did. You can run C++ code from the terminal line. There's a shortcut key for it, Control tilde, and now you have a little terminal right here to run it. And I'm going to use the tab completion method, which is not working. Why isn't it working? Oh, there it goes. It took a minute to catch up with me for some reason, but it should be going to exe. Uh-oh. There it is, enter a string. Let's see, I was trying to think of I found one word the other day, not part of doesn't have a vowel, but there aren't many words that don't have a vowel. And there it is, the first vowel is at index 2. Why is E at index 2? Mr. Andy, Mr. Pedro?
Start with zero.
Yep, it's like an array, always start at 0, except MATLAB, vectors start at 1. Yeah, you don't need to know unless you get into MATLAB. So there we are. That's one use of using the index. Oh, I'm not using the index, am I? I'm keeping track. Yeah, I'm not using the index to get that. I'm keeping track of this and bringing that in. All right, so I kind of jumped ahead. One of the things that happens, we've been getting input with CIN, which works fine for all our numbers and all that stuff. And it works fine for characters, but we run into a problem with strings. Let's see what that problem is. The problem is, oh, now it's starting to work. My tab completion works. Okay, what is my name? Well, my name is Bill. Perfecto, everything is great. What if I run it again and I put in Bill Loring? What's going to happen? Haven't done this tutorial yet, I'm guessing. CIN sees the space as not an alphabet character, or not as it has to be either letters or numbers. If you put a space in there, CIN doesn't get it for whatever reason. I don't remember exactly why, but it's because it's a space character, which is a non-printing character. So how do we fix that? Well, that's what the string library can do. We have to have the string library to do get line, which is kind of the default operation of all our other stuff, but with C++, you have to build everything from scratch. You have to go out and cut down the lumber and saw it in half and polish it off and make your own nails and everything. So we create our string just like we normally would. We use cout just like we normally would. Get line combines CIN with name. And it says, well, if there's a space, I don't care. It tells CIN to just get everything that I typed in. So that's part of the string library. And what's the name of this one? Name, get line. There it is. So if I enter Bill, it does good with that. If I enter Andrew, oh gosh, I forgot your last name, Andrew. Andrew. Oh, well, I know Pedro's last name. Presidio. Andrew Presidio. There we are. So now we can get two things or a whole line of strings at once, which is what the normal input does and everything else. C++ is, its own character. It likes to do its own thing. All right, what's our next one to look at? We are going to look at, we get line, string methods, concatenate. We know what concatenate means, right? What's concatenate mean? What concatenate do for us? How do we use concatenate? Concatenate. I love that word. It joins strings together. If you add numbers, you get 1 + 1 = 2. If you join the characters 1 + 1, you get 1, 1. Because you're concatenating strings or characters together. You can't concatenate characters together into a character, but you can concatenate characters or strings into a string. So here's hello, here's world. Concatenate those together, we get hello world. And I put a space in there on purpose so it didn't look stupid. You can also do set st1 plus equals, which adds it on to the end. Okay, there's a good one. We just looked at length, size is the same thing. I don't know why they have two of them, but they do. Here's how we can grab stuff out. We can use our bracket operator, which we use in arrays. Let me find that, Hummer. It's going to be one of these. Oh, I don't know which one it is. It doesn't have a name. Well, that's no good. I must have it later on. I know I have this somewhere. Let's see. It's not guess passwords. It's vowel. CIN, get line strings. Well, I'm pretty sure it's in here. Because Joe Strings does all kinds of stuff. Now we're concatenating two variables together. Right here, we're concatenating. I'm not finding the part that I want, but maybe I'll get it later on. So in C++, you have two different ways to create variables. You can do this, which creates the variable and assigns the value to it. In modern C++, you do this, and it initializes the variable with the value all at one time. Is that a big deal? No, but it's the more modern C++ rules. There's been versions of C++ up to, I think we're at 22 or something like that now. So in the modern version of C++, you'll see this. You'll also see equals to. You'll see both. Concatenation. Boop, boop, boop. We can add anything together to concatenate. We can concatenate a string onto a string we've already concatenated. And we can find the length of the string, which we looked at that earlier. Now, how do we get a character at a certain location? We can use bracket. That's our operator we've used with arrays to pull out information out of an array. At does the same thing, and I can't remember if that's a safer way to do it, if it doesn't exist, if it doesn't return anything. I'll have to look that up. Seems like that's the difference. This is part of the string library. Does it say this part of the string library? I don't know. It doesn't. This is part of like your normal built-in stuff. And we can find C. Well, there's something else. We can look through a string and find a particular character. Once we find the character's position, we can then pull all the characters out from that point until the end of the string. So with that, with substring and position, we can pull any types of combinations out of a string and put it back together. Let's see what this example does. Which is something you end up doing when you're processing strings, processing passwords, processing information from a website, processing reports. You may get a part number that's like this, but you actually only need that part of the part number to do a report. So you pull out that part of the part number or various other things. What was the name of that? Oh, Strings Joe Cool. It should have been called Joe Cool Strings, but what can you do? So we concatenated the length. So the character at the 6th position is 0. The character here is this. C is at the 4th position. Is it really? Oh, I'm doing this one. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can substring this part out and pull it out. And I can pull just this part if I want, because I can substring where I start and where I stop. Cool stuff. I think we're at the end of the, change case, 2 lower, 2 upper. String does not have a change case method, but character does, which is interesting. Which I used it with my isval thing. Yep, to change the case of the characters. Gas password length is just to show how you can use length and compare strings by how long they are. That's all that is. It's not very complex. Here we have the find and the substring. So we bring in an input string, what we're looking for. Use our getLine, which is a good thing to use anytime you're doing a string. Here's our character we're looking for. We find that character. What it returns is the position, the number. Then we can see if we find the right if this is not in that string, and NPOS means that it indicates not found. It doesn't error out. It just says, oh, it's not in there, so we're good. So we search for it, we find it, and then we substring from that position. If it's not found, we say, oh, it's not found. Oh, there's my isval. I already went through that. Yep, there we go. So here's a little simple string practice from you. We're going to have another case of one of my favorite string exercises. I think it's next week because we've done it with other languages. There it is, Pig Latin is a good example. I mean, You're always gonna be, every job, programming job you get, you're gonna be asked to do a Pig Latin program. I just know it. No, but you're gonna be asked to manipulate strings. Okay, Andy, what do you think? Just trying to get your attention out of the homework there.